guys. Welcome to Almost 30 Podcast. Happy you're here. What's going on?
What's happening?
What's happening?
How are your reels going?
Oh, my reels are crushing. I made like 10 this weekend, actually, on Saturday, of old reels, like when we went to Japan or Australia and stuff. It's actually a blast.
It's really anything that
I did one of Fiji.
Anything. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, can't wait to see it. Anything new that comes out, I'm always like,
I know, same.
I don't want to do what everyone's doing. And then I'm like, to your point, it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's fun to reuse content. Like I was like, oh, this is a good excuse for me to reuse old content, but never, I mean, whatever. Who fucking. But you know what, this is like a weird thing. I did a Q&A on my Instagram. I was just like, hey, ask me questions. And I was answering tons of questions. And I got the most views I've ever gotten on anything I've ever done. And it was no photo, just me replying. And I was like, of course, I'm not like, oh, great job. I was thinking, I'm like, oh, Instagram's rewarding me for engaging more by doing a Q&A, by serving my stories to more people. Because a Q&A is almost like the most engaged.
I see.
Because I'm asking people are replying, I'm replying, we're going back and forth, then we're going back and forth in the DMs. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, they're awarding me by serving my Facebook or my stories to get more views because I'm engaging more.
Interesting.
Isn't that weird?
Oh, that's so right. I know what I'm doing tonight.
I know what you're saying.
Q&As are fun though, because it really like, you just get to be yourself.
I just like them because I just like to, it's like waiting for the invitation, like the human design thing.
Yes.
So I can wait for the invitation. I only do them maybe once a month because it's a lot of energy.
Yeah, it is.
You're like, oh, and it's hard because whatever.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Let me ask you guys, do you give a shit?
Honestly.
Oh, man. I'm excited for today's episode, and I actually want to like kind of pre-talk about Chinae and just kind of like how she made me feel about just being kind of like a person.
Tell me more.
So I just feel like Chinae, and I had never met Chinae before, but I had been following her for quite some time. I just feel like she's like very much vulnerable in process, but is so confident and owns the point at which she's at.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think is really hard at times. And I think that's why she's so relatable. And I think like her audience probably just feels like, oh, like I can do that too. Like I can be kind of on the in-between or not quite integrated on this certain issue yet, but I can still be like really confident and really like thriving and loving most parts of my life. Right?
Yes.
Period.
I agree. You know, it's something, and to that, there's something she did recently on her stories was she polled everyone on their political views, which I was like, oh, buckle up, baby.
Yeah.
Like she was like, all right, we're going to see like where everyone's at. And I was like literally strapping the fuck in. And I'm like, all right, okay, let's see. But she did it so well where she was like, I'm liberal. I mostly vote liberal, but I'm curious for the people that follow me that are conservative or whatever, why you're voting, why you're voting the way you're voting. And she shared like their responses. And it was just, I don't know what was going on in the DMs. I don't know what people were thinking, but I thought it was done really well. And I thought it was really important. And it seemed, I perceived it as being very non-judgmental. And I think that was her intention, was really just to be like, oh, this is what people are thinking from the other side. You know, because a lot of us, when we're in one position, are in an echo chamber. But really, everyone wants the same things. You know, we want to be happy. We want to have a full stomach. We want to be able to just create and live freely. So it was just fascinating. I was like, oh, wow, that's a bold move. And like, it was really well done.
It's kind of like seeing, so all of these people follow her. So there's like that kind of commonality, and there's more commonalities than that. But knowing that like, oh, we don't have to maybe like be super divisive. Obviously, politics are divisive in themselves, but it's just interesting to see like, oh wow, so maybe we do have things in common. Like I think with politics and other very divisive things, it's like, well, they're not like me.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
humanizes it.
Yeah.
I thought that was powerful. I'm like, oh, that was baller.
That's really powerful.
That was a baller move. Yeah, but this episode's just such a good one. We are on Press Send, her podcast as well this week, giving advice, you know,
You know us.
You know us. Just giving advice. Which is hilarious because Lindsey and I did a podcast like years ago, and it was an advice podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I'm trying to remember.
We were on it separately.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
And I was not.
I sucked.
I just am at the phase where I'm like, everyone's going to do whatever they want.
Totally.
And, everyone's on their path. And maybe they need to stay with that person until they learn the lesson. Maybe they need to just keep it on so that they learn it instead of other people shaming them or telling them. So it's weird. Like before, me in high school or college, oh my God, I'd be like, I need to start an advice show and I know nothing. And then as you get, the more you find out, the less you know. So it was like, oh wow, I don't really know enough to even be giving people advice, which we can give people advice, but
for sure. But I think it depends on the context. Like that show that we were on years ago, it's almost like it was a different age range. So it almost...
Big facts.
Yeah, it skewed younger.
Big facts.
So I almost became like a teenager and I was like, freaking dump him.
Yeah, honestly.
And that was the vibe of the show that was more funny. And I was like, what funny shit can I say about what's happening?
You're like, dump him, have a girls' night, order an ice cream, and text your ex-boyfriend.
When really I wanted to be like,
talking about?
You need to like sit in silence.
Yes,
you need to like take contemplative walks.
Of course.
But that's not
Here's
going to sell a show.
Totally. You have to get like scandalous. You could. Here's what you do. You call up his best friend and you suck his dick. That's what you do to get him back, girl. And you're like, what am I saying?
Oh my
But it was.
God.
Yeah, that's the thing too. That was a funny situation because it was a younger demographic than we go.
Yeah.
And so we were like, I was like, I don't know. Like, and I remember the host was like, one of her answers was like, you have to masturbate. I was like, oh my God. It was amazing. I was like, oh, that's dope. Like, I would have never thought of that.
Holy moly.
Anyway, so that's press send that we're on. Back to what we were talking about.
And we're going to do a workshop with Chinae. So we were talking to Chinae the other day about this workshop. And she, again, just like is so dynamic and thoughtful. So not only do you see that like on her channel, but like we're going to bring this to the workshop. We are going to be digging into body love and sex and how that is so deeply connected. And we're actually going to have a special guest join Chinae, her couples sex therapist, and it's going to be good.
It's going to be amazing. We wanted it to be different. This was fully Chinae's idea. Our idea was body acceptance and just body love, like that kind of theme. And she's like, I want to do something different.
Yeah,
I want to make it special and interesting, and adding in the element of a lot of women say, when they talk about their body, is feeling insecure in sex. So how can we talk about sex and body love and body acceptance within that and make it just super powerful? And so it's going to be, all people that identify as women with a sex therapist. We're going to have breakouts for groups. We're going to do Chinae with a therapist. We'll do a section with Lindsey, a section with or with myself. And it's just going to be cool.
Really cool. Yeah. So if you want more information on that, you can go to almost30.com. It's going to be virtual, so you can access it wherever you are, which we love. And then we have other workshops that we've done, everything from aliens and ascension to intuition, to human design, to transcending fear, getting over anxiety. We've
plant
got
medicine. That's a good one.
Medicine is
with the Nima Mundi herbals. So like herbals, how to use them. Truly. Yeah, there's tons of cool topics that we have on there. So shop almost30.com. We also have our apparel, organic, non-toxic, slow fashion designed by Daisy LA, which is so cute. You guys look so good in it. I'm seeing everyone's photos. Looks amazing. You guys are doing great.
Truly. Love seeing it. And yeah, if you don't already follow us on Instagram, so much of what we are doing is showcased on Instagram, as well as other just funny and inspirational memes and thoughts and musings by us and our team. So that's at Almost 30 Podcast on Instagram. I'm at Lindsey Simcik, and Krista is at It's Krista. We love talking to you. DM us, please. We just love connecting. And yeah, if this episode resonates with you, it would be so cool, and we'd be so grateful if you could pass it along to a friend or family that you feel could really hear this message. And of course, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Question.
Yes.
Are you Are you naked? Or are you comfortable doing video? I just want to check in with you.
Is my video not on?
Sorry.
We want to see the face.
Naked? I'm actually nude, but that's how I do all of my podcasts.
I was going to say, that's how you roll.
I mean,
the
truly
lashes
though,
are looking perfect.
And I love the brunette.
Can I just say, I didn't have lashes on. Obviously, they fell off in quarantine.
Same.
One little hanger.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I had a unicorn eyelash, like just one little like, and my boyfriend was like, no, don't look different. I got lashes this week. And of course he was like,
I want to fuck you.
We literally woke up this morning. He goes, you're just so pretty. And I was like, no,
that's the whole thing.
I'm like, literally, it's the eyelashes and you don't know it. You want to believe that this is what it is.
Guys are where it's like big, it's like long eyelashes. You know, it's like those ultra feminine parts for a masculine man or whatever. That I know. I was the same with my boyfriend. He's like, it just looks different because mine are. I'm done with mine now because, dude, it's just a whole fucking appointment vibe. I'm like, I don't want to be doing this forever.
I think we've realized through this time how involved some of our beauty routines are.
Beyond.
I was used to getting my hair cut and colored every 5 weeks, lashes, every 3 weeks, the nails, the pedicures. And I'm like, wow, I'm really high maintenance. And the Botox fully wore off. I had 3 deep wrinkles. I was like, I had 3 visible deep wrinkles, like resting face. And I was like,
quarantine creature. But that's what scared me about. So the Botox, I was like, because sometimes I'm like, you read one article and it's like Botox is preventative. It helps prevent the wrinkles. And you read another and it's like, if your muscles are not working, then your face is going to fall off. And you're like, what the fuck is it?
Well, I'm going to err on the side of I'm okay with it either falling. I will do it. I will continue to do it. But literally my lady came in. She goes, we might need to do a little extra this time.
I realized how much it was
5
working.
more.
Yeah.
I was like, I could go a little bit and still be pretty smooth. I think I started at a time when it was like, okay. If I started a day later, it wouldn't have.
My mom, one day I was like, literally just like, we were driving the car in Texas. I was home for a vacation. And I was like, let's go get Botox. And she was like, okay. And so we called, they had an appointment open. She went, she started when she was like 60 and her forehead also smoothed out completely.
Really?
At 60 years of, I can't even do it. Wow. Honestly, the other day I was trying to be disappointed about something and I was like, I can't.
You're like, just know with my energy that I'm pissed.
I'm mad at you. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. And
us too.
It feels like we've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah.
I know you guys came to New York and did something with Heather.
Ships in the night too at the one because we were at your studio. Right. We recorded at your studio with Gabby Bernstein and you were recording in the room 2 doors down. And I was so bummed because I wanted to see you in person that day, but we just missed each other.
I know. It's not great. It's not great. How are you guys doing with Dear Media and all?
We're actually not with Dear Media.
Oh, I thought you were.
Yeah, we're on our own.
No.
We're doing everything alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I think you were with Dear Media? Maybe someone from Dear Media said that you guys would be great, person to pod swap with. But do you like being on your own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a vibe.
It's just work.
You guys do everything.
You can join our network if you want to leave.
I mean,
we got you.
Hey,
off the record.
Off the record, but on the record.
I know,
maybe.
honestly.
Are you guys happy and you like doing everything alone?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, building it from the ground up, it's with some things. I think if we had an existing brand and then started a podcast, it would behoove us to walk into a network and be like, okay, we'd love for you to handle XYZ. But because we've built the pod from the ground up and it's become a brand and other things, it just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you guys love doing live shows?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a blast. I think we're
that's hilarious. I know. We're like, it was a time and place for sure too. We'll do it again and you'll do it for sure. It's amazing. It's just it's been really nice to be home and just do your thing being home. shows are a whole can of worms. That's travel.
Oh, yeah.
That's, you know, like, and we loved it for the tour for 2 years, and we'll do it again. But right now it's been like so nice to be like, oh, I can just stay home and it feels like I have a job. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
How like I worked in the corporate world forever, so it was like I had a job, and now it's like, oh, I have a job where I work during the day and I can like have freedom at night or whatever. And with that, you can't because you're traveling literally all the time.
I know. I feel like in all of 2018 and half of 2019, I was just traveling for work constantly. And I loved it because I was like single and I was like, this is great. And you go to really cool places. Like, I was going to like Nicaragua and Japan and all these places. And then I was like, 2019 hit and I was just like, I need some time to be present and be still and to be home because I was like, I'm in my freaking, I don't want to say, I turned 35 in a month. So I think I'm mid 30s, but I'm like, I need to like relax a little bit because traveling, as fun as it is, it's work. It's work. And unless you're traveling like because you're independently wealthy and you just like to vacation, it's just work. And I was finding myself in like hotel rooms by myself on like press trips. And I'm like, I'm in the most beautiful place in the world with people I could give a shit about.
Yeah, it's actually really lonely.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, this is like harrowing because you can know, you know, on the outside that everyone's, and this is what's harrowing about it. On the outside, it's being perceived as the most amazing thing. And your job is to perceive it as the most amazing thing. And it's not always the most amazing thing. So that friction between the truth is really hard to live with all the time. You know, you're like, oh, I don't want to lie to people, and it's not like you're lying and being like, this is amazing. And it's not, but it's just,
but there's a guilt around actually being real about it. Cause people are like, your life is amazing. What are you talking about? And you're like,
well, I think even with what we do now, like whether it's, kind of like social content creator / podcaster, like work, like you're living your life online and there's a lot of amazing parts of that. And you want to have this like overwhelming gratitude about getting the opportunity that a lot of people want. But then on the other hand, you're like, there's so much that comes with this, especially like, through the last 4 months, I'm sure you guys have felt it too. Just like living your life in front of a lot of people through times of like deep anxiety, hardship, your own personal crap, plus the world's crap is really hard. It's so hard.
It's
unreal.
It's
been interesting to navigate the last couple months. I'm sure you felt that too.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. It's been like, just to be, I know this is, it's like you're living your dream in so many ways, but it's like, I've realized too what leadership is through these times. I'm like, and I'm learning. So I realize what I need to learn more so than I realize what it is. And it's been like, oh wow, I see the gaps in where I show up as a leader. And it's almost like before I'd be like, yeah, I'm a leader, but I didn't really fully understand what being a leader meant. And now I am fully realizing how much responsibility, which also comes with opportunity, leaders have. And it's actually been a little bit of an adjustment for me to be like, okay, I am receiving opportunities, but also comes with this great responsibility of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it's really just like set in this year. And I'm like, damn, okay.
Oh yeah. When people are like, how do I move through a global pandemic? And how do I move through like civil rights and social justice issues? And I need your take because I'm taking it into like my psyche as like truth. You're like, wow.
Yes.
I love talking about like lip gloss, but this is like something that like, I think you realize that you have influence and you have leadership when people come to you in moments like this. But then, like you said, there is this like responsibility to it. And it can be like, I think it's heavy, but it's made me feel my community and people more than ever. I'm sure like you just feel connected. You also experience like people's emotional high lows during this time, and people are extra on edge and people are extra. So I've been just trying to like really take people and kind of be like, okay, you may be extra frustrated or extra negative or something, and I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because we're all running on empty at this moment.
A lot of projections.
Yeah.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of projections happening. And also too, you know, I've realized with, you know, in therapy and otherwise, it's like 50%, but almost 50% of what I feel like my job is my internal work that happens with me not being public, because I know so much of that is reflected in my leadership, in me being a public figure. So it's like I'm realizing now as a leader that my job is really my internal work. And, you know, maybe I'll have a break from that in a year or something when I really am just able to sort of step in fully to like the shadow work or like the results of the shadow work that I'm doing now. But it's like, dude, as a public figure, you have to be confident. You have to have, you have to be able to take shit. You have to be able to like receive feedback, give feedback, ignore feedback. Like you have to be able to do all these things that like can be really, really hard for knocking you off balance, for making you feel insecure, for making you feel not on your path. It's like you are in receipt of a lot of the anxiety that's happening in the collective because you're more visible. So it's a lot.
And then there's a momentum to which we share and we talk about things so openly and honestly. And then when we meet something that maybe is our work to do on our own and internally, the audience expects the work internally to be shared in real time as consistently as your other content. And that's, I think, too, where I've just found a little bit of like, I'm just thinking about it a lot because I'm like, do I owe it to people to share everything that I'm doing, you know?
Right.
Because you
and also, you know,
you share so much. So it's like, I'm sure you have the same thing as us, is like, you share so much, so they expect you to share everything.
Well, yeah. And also like, I feel like we're at this weird time where we're really judged on the present thought. Like there isn't a lot of grace for the process. It's like, what's your end result? What's your answer? What's your final answer? That's what I kind of feel like, especially like moving through, like, obviously the heartache of, I mean, the last couple months, but also just like, I mean, this has been going on forever with like the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. Like this has all been happening for a long time. And so for me, it's like learning more. I've always been interested in activism for a long time and kind of like the way the world works in social systems. But I think having it so highlighted and having to process, you know, such horrible things in front of others, there isn't a lot of grace for the process of going through all those emotions. And so, you know, it's hard to, I don't want to ever tell someone what to think. I'm trying to share where I'm at, but then, you know, you can kind of get beat up for like, oh, well, you're not as far as I want you to be.
Yes.
And also other people just may be not even able to broach the subject yet. Yes. So, you know, it's been an interesting time to be a creator that shares a lot, but I think, that's where the trust with the people that follow you and the people that listen to you comes in, is I just have to trust. And I have to say, like, a lot of the hesitation on my part, or like worry on my part and anxiety on my part, has been that it's insecurity. You know, it's nothing more than that. It's literally me feeling insecure about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, when I have to fall back into the trust that the people that are there for me and the people that are in this community and the people that listen and read and have been around forever, like, I have to trust that they're going to catch me, you know, and they're going to kindly correct, and they're going to be supportive and loving. And loving doesn't always mean nice. You know, loving doesn't always mean that people are nice. It does mean that they're kind, but it's, the more I put myself out there, and this is with all social media stuff, the more I put myself out there, the more I have been like absolutely like almost painfully vulnerable about anything. The things that I write, that I have a pit in my stomach before I put them out into the world. I usually know it's that's how I usually know it's the right thing. You know, if you're really terrified to say something, or it's like, oh, this is such an ugly thing that I think, or this is such an ugly truth about being a woman or being me, you know, those are the things that you're like, I got to say this.
Have you always been like that? Just
Yeah.
like sharing so openly, or was there a turning point like in your career as an influencer?
You know what? I was like, I mean, I worked in marketing for 8 years. I was like a marketing director. And so my job was to speak on behalf of a brand. And so, but the thing I learned from that time was just that people were at the core. Yeah, I was like selling luxury furniture to people who didn't need luxury furniture. But the beautiful thing is I learned like just like the power of relationship and the power of just people. And I loved people, and I always have loved people, I think from like childhood. And I've always found the importance of that. So I think moving into influence work, I basically like after those 8 years, my boss fired me and said, you're supposed to be an entrepreneur.
Respect.
And yeah, I can remember it was like a February.
Wow.
And it was freaking cold in New York. And I just walked in the snow and cried because I was like, he basically said, your last day is in 2 days.
Wow. Thank you.
And he said, you're supposed to be an entrepreneur. You're supposed to work for me. I'm going to pay you for 2 years. 2 months. Go start a company.
Wow.
And I was like, I'd been there for 8 years. So like having basically 48 hours to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life, I was kind of like, well, one of the things that I always tell people like to lean back on is like, remember what people have told you you're good at. Remember, and if you don't know what you should be doing in the future, like ask people that you really trust, like, what am I good at? And people had always told me, like, first of all, I'm good at people. And also like, I loved bringing people together. And so I started an event planning company. And even in that, the relationships were at an all-time high. Social media was like, not what I wanted to do. Didn't care about being an influencer. I never wanted to be one, never thought I would do this job. And I think maybe that's why I'm good at it. Because I saw when I was doing event planning, I actually started doing Instagram just as it was actually an interview for a job. I started my Instagram account for a job with ClassPass, and I started a fitness Instagram account because I didn't have any experience. And they were like, you don't have any experience and you have 300 followers on Instagram. I was like, okay. So I didn't get the job, but I just started, I was building community online. And so I wasn't doing social media as a job at that point. I was just doing it because I liked it. And that I think I was just talking to people about my life. And I think that's what's led me to this point of still continuing just to tell the truth, to talk about my life, to say the things that a non-public figure would say, because I never wanted to be a public figure. And I never saw this place as a place for a public figure. It was just a place for friends. Of course, eventually I had to stop taking event planning clients because this is a real big job on its own. But the kind of thread through it all was people. You know, I loved people when I worked a corporate job. I loved people when I planned events, and I like love people now. And so my responsibility to people is just to tell them the truth about themselves, and then tell them the truth about me, which is sometimes really hard to say, you know, when it comes to like, for example, like people always are like, oh, you're so confident. Like you're so like body confident. And I do talk a lot about that on my channels, but then some days I'm like, fuck, I fucking hate how my thighs look.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, like I'm like during quarantine, I've been like really struggling with my like mental health surrounding like weight and fitness and things like that. And, you know, I think it's hard to share that because people are like, no, you're the person that has that figured out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to struggle with it because you're supposed to be my example.
Yeah.
And my thing is kind of like, well, let me be your example in the fact that like we fuck up. We have negative thoughts. This is part of like the process. It's sometimes just hard to share because you don't want to appear like you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But do any of us know what the fuck we're talking about?
Yeah. With the body thing too, that's why I've kind of avoided talking about that too much from a personal perspective. I've had, you know, issues my whole life with it. And it always was like, I have moments where I feel fine to talk about it and I feel okay. And then there's just so many days where I'm like, dude, I'm so fucking sick of this in my head, I cannot even talk about this publicly. You know, it's like,
Right.
and having the pressure of, it's not, you know, triggering is not the word because that's way too intense, but to always be in that conversation for me is a little much. You know, for me to always be engaged in a conversation around that topic made me I talk about it when I want to talk about it, but it's almost too much if I was to lean into it too much.
Well, I think people always ask me, like, how do you become more happy about your body? How do you become more positive? And I don't actually subscribe to the body positivity movement at all, because I think it's really cruel to ourselves to be positive or expect ourselves to be positive about our body all the time. We live in a culture that tells us that we are not enough. So it's just like, it's a ridiculous onus to put on us to think positively about our body all the time. But it is about being in a place of neutrality or confidence or respect, at least. But I always tell people, like, I think you're right on with actually not leaning into it all the time. I lean into it a lot because I know my audience really likes to hear about that. But personally, I actually try not to think about it very much, because I do feel like that is where we go off the rails, is when our brain is saturated with this shit. You know, we spend so much time thinking about it and not enough time doing and thinking about things that really cultivate us as people, like that make us fucking amazing people. We focus on these things, and we're taught that that's kind of like the measuring stick of our worth in this society, particularly if you are like us and you're in front of a camera a lot, if you're interviewed a lot, if you're live in person. And, you know, I've had thoughts of like, I don't like edit my photos or anything, like, you know, whatever the thing is like Photoshop or whatever, Facetune, whatever. But the thing is like, you don't want someone to be like, see you in person and be like, oh, you're not as pretty as I thought you would be, or, you know, or whatever. But those thoughts still like cross your mind. And that's like kind of the unhealthy part of social media as it relates to body image for me, is I want to match up to the expectations of everyone. So that's when I just started putting really like not flattering pictures of myself online. You know, and I'm like, some of these pictures, I'm like, these are things that I would never post and that I would never want to post. But it's important for me because we all have that. We all have those photos that you see of yourself and you're like, no, that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Posting like just kind of the dynamic nature of you online. I very much relate to that, because I think there's kind of this like weird relationship that happens with your Instagram community or wherever you mainly live as someone who's online, that they feel a certain way when you change, you know?
Yeah.
So for you to be always speaking, not always, but speaking a lot about your body and your relationship with your body, and then all of a sudden maybe you want to change your body in some way, whatever that is. And then they're like, wait. You know, to your point before, where they rely on you for this type of content or to be speaking in a certain way. So I think I love that you're posting dynamically, in the sense that it's like the not so flattering pictures or like in real time, real life. But how do you deal with that relationship with your community? Because I'm sure 95% of it is so positive and life-giving. But, you know, we've had moments where, as much as we love our community, we're like, whoa, am I in like a codependent relationship right now?
Right. I want you to be this. And when you're not this, I don't love it. Well, I mean, here's the thing that I've realized is, for every person that doesn't like where you're at now, 5 more will come on that do like where you're at right now. And since I started as a fitness wellness account, again, not wanting to be an influencer at all, not wanting to be doing this job, I've always been a writer. So I see my account as more like writing with photos that have to be there because there's a spot for photos.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like to write. That's what I like to do. And so, for me, it's never really been about the visual aspect of it. But starting out as a fitness wellness account, when I started transitioning to more of a lifestyle, just talking about life, certainly I was worried at times that people wouldn't go on that journey with me. But then I was like, do I only want to be surrounded by people, whether that's socially like in real life or socially online that want me to be boxed into a certain thing. Like, do I want that energy in my life? Do I want to be around people who want a certain version of me and not all of me? I wouldn't put up with that shit in a romantic relationship. I wouldn't put up with that with friendships. So why should I put up with that in a social media community? And so for me, I was kind of like, well, whoever will go, and I'll extend my hand to whoever wants to be with me. But I think it's important, especially as women, we aren't one thing. And the importance of shifting that we are just this way, we care about just these things. I think that's what's been really amazing with the last few months is people are being forced to talk about things that aren't their programming. And when you have to show up as a 360 version of yourself, it can be very challenging, but it's necessary. And I hope that, like, I have a friend that was doing kind of like wellness blogging as well. And then she started talking about something else in her relationships and therapy and all this stuff. And she's like, you wouldn't believe how many more people kind of like were drawn to me. And I was like, this is what matters. And this isn't for influencers. This is for everyone. Mm-hmm. When you show up as a complicated version of a person, that is interesting. And it is what people are drawn to. And it is compelling not because it's just interesting. It's because it makes people feel like they can be that way, that we can care about. Yeah, sure. You can care about your hair and you can care about your lashes in quarantine, but you can also be like thinking about activism. These things, like, you can hold it in one hand and that's okay. And so I think it's been a really fun journey with an audience to kind of be like, let's see how malleable everybody is. Let's see, like, yesterday I randomly wrote a thing about like Lucille Ball and how she was like inspiring to me. And that's so random and has nothing to do with my content normally. But I was just like, this is what I'm thinking about. Let's see how it goes. You know, I'm just going to talk, you know, the way I would talk to a friend of what I'm thinking about. So I think we all feel pressure to be like acceptable, bite-sized versions of ourselves, but we don't really need to be.
Yeah, 100%. I think for, you know, a lot of people, I guess I was wondering, like, do you think that you can exist 360 online? You know, like, do you think that it's possible to fully exist in your expression online and to have the entirety of you be portrayed on Instagram?
I think you can have like a tasting menu of yourself. You know, I don't think you can eat 10 full dishes of yourself, but I think you can have little tiny bite-sized versions of all the things that you care about. But I also think there's this importance to protecting whatever parts of you that you need to. And I always admire when people need to protect things that are personal. And I will never judge what people care to share online, or even, I mean, you know, because most of the people that are listening probably aren't, you know, content creators professionally. So like, I think that you're allowed to hold back what you need to hold back to preserve yourself and your sanity. But also, like, we're not always, I mean, through therapy, I've learned, like, I'm not always ready to share certain things because I'm not done processing. It's cooking.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, like, I've had a really challenging relationship with my dad. And like, you know, I've mentioned online, like, I've had a tough relationship with my dad and like my dad wasn't around a lot, but I've never actually really talked about it. And it's because I'm just not done cooking. Like, I'm not done cooking about it. And like, maybe I never will be done cooking about it. And I think that's the thing is, like, we are all in process and in progress, and we should share the things that feel cathartic to share. But if something feels like deeply personal and you're not ready, I like respect that. Like, what do you guys feel like are like things that you don't like to like dive into, or like what is protected for you if there's anything? Like, I know you said the
Yeah.
like body image stuff a little
I
bit.
think body, I've pretty much shared it all with body. You know, it's easy for me, and I've moved through it. I think there's a lot of things that happened growing up that I probably will never share publicly because it's not it's my perspective to share, and it's not,
Yeah.
you know, my perspective isn't sharing whatever whole story there could potentially be. And, you know, I always just come from like, what is the point? What is the point if I were to share this? Is it for, do I want revenge? Do I want to tarnish someone's name? Does it make my ego feel good? Like, there's a lot of things that you have to do when checking in. And yeah, I'm going through things right now that I'm not ready to share about just because it's like, I don't have it figured out yet. And I don't really, it's not like I want to provide like, I went through this, here's my solution. Here's the 3 steps to go through it. But it's like, I need to figure out what the fuck for me, you know, before I can be an example for others or be a leader. And I'll share when I want to feel very vulnerably, but it's like, I don't want to always be open for feedback when something needs to be decided and done in my soul. You know, when it's really me and me that needs to do the work. So sometimes it can be dangerous if you're sharing publicly while doing the work, because it can put you off your path.
Oh, totally. And be influenced all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think it gets tricky with like false validation of how you're doing with the work. You know?
Oh God, yeah.
Because sometimes
So
I'm like,
true.
okay, let me share about this because I'm going through it right now, and the likes translate to like, okay, phew, like people say I'm doing good, even though they have no idea like what is really going on.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's been important for me, especially being in a new relationship. I'm like, I really want to tell the world like all the good things and you know, all the things we're working on. But I'm like, actually, I'm going to do this different this time.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep a lot of it private because also there's another person involved, a human being that isn't in the spotlight. And I really respect that. And I also want to be with myself as I navigate this new relationship rather than me and my followers are navigating this relationship, even though
we're not all in bed together. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Exactly. It just gets a little confusing for me. You know, it gets really confusing.
Yeah, with therapy and working in therapy, how has that impacted you and what's that been like?
So I was that person that was like, therapy, like I don't need that. Like I don't need, like I've always been confident as a person. I'm always been introspective. I've always kind of been like, oh, let me do the work myself. Yeah. And so a few years ago, I was going through a really horrible relationship that I thought was the person I was supposed to be with. And it was just awful. And I was like, how is something that I've decided that is the one, how is this not working out? And, you know, I realized that strong will and desire for a path doesn't mean that that is it. Just because you want something doesn't mean that it's for you. And what I had to do was basically be so convinced through, I mean, I didn't have anywhere else to go. And so, and I was actually, you know, I had been in a relationship with a therapist before, but I got to a place of desperation. And I wish that I had not waited for therapy for desperation to do it. But, you know, I always tell people like, whatever the hell way you get there, you get there. Like it was the way that I had to learn it the hard way. And so I started with my first therapist a few years ago, and he was like, now I'm not sure that I would go to like a 65-year-old man as my therapist, but I did at the time. And like, I was like trying to explain to him like Snapchat and stuff. Like I was like, this is wild. I was like, okay, I think I need someone younger.
You're like, I think I need 10 minutes back, please.
Yeah, like I need a refund on this for like the description time. Venmo me. Yeah. I don't even think Venmo existed then. But yeah, so I started therapy, and it was actually like mind blowing to know, because I'm and I'm sure a lot of people listening also feel this way when you go to therapy for the first time. I was like, how are you?
No, 100%.
And he was like,
Totally. That's what I do too. I'm like, can I hug you?
Honestly.
yeah. Like,
And they're
how
like,
are
sure.
you doing this week? Like, how are
Yes.
you dealing with everything
I was
going
like,
on?
I need 2 sessions before I'm your favorite, period, the end.
Oh,
Like trying
yeah.
to
And I
figure
want
out how I could be her favorite, like a psychopath.
absolutely. And like, how can I be the best
Yes.
patient or client
I want
possible?
this to be fun for you.
Yeah.
I would be like, I want this to be fun for you.
My therapist would be like, are you like, I would be sitting in a certain way, like proper and weird. She's like, are you okay? Like, do you want to like take off your shoes?
Body language is
like,
straight up bad.
yeah. It was so funny. I'm like,
No, you know what?
okay.
Actually, I was, so after him, I like, gosh, this was such a wild ride because then I ended up needing a psychiatrist because I started having panic attacks and having massive anxiety. So talk therapy wasn't enough. Right. If you don't think that you're a person that needs therapy, imagine being a person that thinks you need meds. Like, didn't think I was that person. Certainly was like, no, I'm not a person that takes like psychiatric medication. Like, no, that's not me. I'm the one that always has my shit together. Well, I didn't have my shit together and I was having panic attacks, so much so that I was like passing out in public places, which was very scary. So I ended up being on medication for like 6 months, kept meeting my therapist, actually broke up with the person, ended up doing therapy and got off meds eventually. And I've had several therapists since then. Me and Craig do couples therapy too. Like not like super consistently, but when we need to. Which I think is amazing. Like I told him actually on our first date, I said, wouldn't it be cool to start doing couples therapy like on your 3rd date and then just like see if it like improves your relationship? And he was like, okay, I'm not going to probably do that. He didn't
like,
ever do. We didn't do that.
a movie, but whatever.
He was like, wow, I thought we'd have sex and like have a couple cocktails, but sure. Therapy sounds fun. If you want to know if they're a real one, bring up like therapy on the first date. For sure. But anyway, speaking of like a therapist talking about like physical stuff, I remember I went out. Oh my God. You do kind of go out with your therapist. I like was dating therapists at the time and being like, I need to find someone new. And I found this one lady who she would stare at my hands the whole time. And like, and I do talk with my hands, but she would stare at my hands the entire session and like be really distracted by my hand motions.
Did
and
you
I'm not
ask
like,
her why?
No, but
they read everything.
But that would make me anxious because I'm like,
of course.
I know.
Am I doing something weird with my hand? Am I like showing some like weird sign with my hand? Like,
I'm like that too.
So finally I emailed her and I was like, hey, you know what? I don't think this is a good fit for me. And she wrote me back. She's like, that's totally fine. And, for everyone, like, it's okay. Therapists don't get offended if you don't click. Like, they want to click with you. And, like, this is not going to be a productive relationship. Like, I thought I had to be the best client, be a good patient, a good client. It's like, they don't give a shit. They want to have a good relationship with you. They don't want you to be, like, scared to go to therapy. So, but I had to message this lady back. I was like, honestly, I think there was, like, a weird physical barrier with us that I just couldn't get over. And she wrote me back. She was like, well, could I ask you like what it was? I was like, yeah, you really stared at my hands a lot. And she was like, I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Wow.
Oh.
And I was like, I wonder if she's staring at everyone's hands.
Wow. I had the other day in therapy, because I always am just trying to be aware of myself, and I kept touching my face or something. I was like, are you noticing me touching my face? And do you think it's because I'm like trying to do something? She's like, haven't thought about it. And I was like, just like, because to know that someone's watching and noticing you is like a weird feeling. So you're like, okay, is this normal? Is this weird? Is this normal? Is this weird? Like, the whole process.
I was reading this Twitter thread about why Zoom meetings and stuff are so exhausting. And it was so interesting because I was like, why do they feel like more tiring and more like, I just feel very unsettled after doing like a Zoom meeting. Yes. But he was saying in a Twitter thread. Yeah. Like I hate this. And this does not feel like regular
honestly, I think we should just cut it.
Like, let's just cut the internet and like see what happens. But he was saying it's because you're not used to seeing yourself when you're talking all the time, especially when you're in groups of people. So it's very exhausting because you're constantly aware of your body, your positioning, the way your face looks. You are realizing that people are able to see everyone. Whereas think if you're at a normal like table at a meeting, there's 10 people. You can look at one person who's talking at a time, but the rest of the time there's a relaxation period of when you can relax your face. You can kind of like adjust your body comfortably. You're kind of like spacing out, whatever. But on Zoom, he said the reason you feel so uncomfortable is because you're always conscious of eyes being on you and you are conscious of your own appearance all the time. And I was like, you know what? That makes so much sense because you aren't comfortable. You're like, why does my mouth look like that? Is that always how my mouth looks?
I'm like, I didn't know I was deformed.
Wow. I didn't. Is this what I've been looking like
Honestly.
the whole time I've been alive? But that's why I was like, wow, that's really exhausting. So I think with the physicality with the therapist, I was like, I'm feeling you noticing me too much. But definitely like my neighbor is a therapist. And I was talking to her about this and about like bouncing around to different therapists and like trying. She's like, literally, if you don't like being with a therapist, you should immediately just move on and feel free to like go out with a lot of therapists and see what they're about. Because I mean, I don't actually suggest dating a therapist. I did it. It was terrible. But go, date a lot of therapists, quote unquote, and see what fits, because it took me a while and I actually just kind of broke up with a therapist. And so I'm on the hunt for a new one.
Really?
Yeah. If you know anyone.
My therapist is life.
What?
One and
Really?
done. She was my first one. I was
Same.
talking to my friend and she was like, yeah, she's really dope. She like laughs a lot. I'm like, done. I'm in. And we laugh. We cry. She doesn't cry. But it's just, I feel so lucky because I was so hesitant. I'm like, because my issue is like trust. So I'm like, oh, they're gonna, how could I trust them? I'm like, how could I trust this stranger? What is this stranger going to do to me? So I'm really working on that now with her, but it was like getting over that and allowing myself to be supported and allowing myself to like trust someone.
Do you guys ever feel like weird? Like I wanted to be so perfect that I would like think about all the things I wanted to talk about beforehand. Yeah. So I would like come in with like a prepared, like if I could have brought notes in, I would have.
100%.
I would go in at full speed and just have like and she would just listen. And then she's like, do you feel like you're in this room right now? Like, cause I would just kind of like spin off everything that happened in the week, but not actually feel the feeling that I was feeling.
Yes.
Right? And then all of a sudden I would get emotional and she's like, what's that? I'm like,
oh, that's the worst when they're like, well, let's go back.
Yes.
Well, I'm like, oh no, you saw me. You saw me for a second.
Yes.
I had like a lip quiver and I'm like, oh God.
They're like, let me tell you what's coming up for me. So mine was like last week. She was like, we were talking about leadership or something. And she's like, you have this part of you that is this divine leader. And then you have this ego. And I was like, damn, getting roasted about my fucking leadership. And
you're like, I actually need therapy for this therapy session.
Honestly, but it was she said it in some other way, but I was like, damn, that's the truth. You need those mirrors of like that, that honesty of truth. But with your therapy and then going, the panic attacks and anxiety, how did that come about for you? And how do you work with that now?
So it's funny because it kind of crept up on me. Like I just never thought of myself as an anxious person. And I learned through a lot of like, obviously like research and then all talking to the professionals, like anxiety manifests in a lot of different ways for everybody. Some of it is conditional. Some of it is temporary. Some of it is based on, past trauma. Some of it's like currently what's going on. For me, my past trauma from like childhood and growing up, I had a lot of trust issues like you and a lot of like abandonment. And so when I was feeling that in my relationship, it was causing it to manifest through anxiety, which I'm definitely a person that loves control. I'm like hardcore Virgo, love like, being the executor of all things and like making sure everything happens perfectly. And so when you feel like you can't do that with your own life, I felt like I was flying off the handle because I was like, I cannot control my feelings about my past. I cannot control how they are manifesting currently. And I don't know how bad they're going to get. And so the panic was something I just like never thought I would experience. I mean, people throw around the word anxiety pretty loosely, and I do think there can be levels of anxiety, whether that's clinical or not. But for me, I think I had always like a low grade anxiety just with control and planning and kind of overthinking. But then, you know, when I had to step into medication was when that overthinking, over planning, over kind of like it just took over my brain. You know, it almost feels like you can't think about anything else because you're so worried about what will happen. And so that tied back to like in my past, like having the bottom drop out. If you felt the bottom drop out before, you know how it feels and you know what to be scared of. You know what to expect. And so for me, it wasn't what if trauma happens? It's when trauma happens again, what will I do? It was an assumption that I will re-experience abandonment, that I will re-experience all of those things. And that was like, you know, and it may happen. I think that's the thing that's scary because no one can tell you, oh, that's not going to happen again to you. You're never going to be hurt like that again. You don't know. You know, there's plenty of people that are navigating situations that they never thought would reoccur to them. And I do think sometimes we're attracted to people and things that feel familiar. And sometimes familiarity is positive, and sometimes familiarity is because it's something that's bad that's happened that you are attracted to again.
Trauma
so
bonding.
For me, it was just like being so afraid of re-experiencing the things that I experienced, that I was trying to safeguard everything in my life, especially in my relationship, for it not to happen. And that not only drives you crazy, but it drives a person crazy, you know? And what I realized through that time is, okay, this is first of all not a good relationship for me because I clearly don't feel safe, but I do need to, after this relationship ends, dig into why I don't feel safe. Not necessarily why this person didn't make me feel safe, but like, why don't I feel safe? And so that took the anxiety medication, basically like felt like it kind of just like popped me out of the hole. Doesn't mean that you're like done, but it kind of just like got me out of that thinking for a bit. I never actually took the panic disorder medication that I was given because my doctor was like, the interesting thing about the body and panic is that often having the medication on you makes it so you never have to take it.
Wow. Oh, powerful.
It's this crazy placebo effect where
Placebo
you know
effect
that
is really
it's real.
interesting and fascinating. Yeah, it's real.
Well, it was like you don't panic because you already know how to get out of panic.
Wow.
And so often she was like, it's just kind of like the security of it is enough. So that was a really interesting, fascinating, weird thing that I discovered about like panic disorder. I mean, and that's not for everybody, obviously, but that was something that she warned me about and was in fact something that happened for me. Getting off medication, I was pretty stubborn about it because I really wanted to do the work mentally, although I don't think that everyone can do that. I think there's different levels. I was experiencing anxiety as it related to a relationship. Once I was out of that relationship, I'm like, okay, I've gotten the jump start out of this. Now I need to like dig in deep to talk therapy. But I think the really hard thing was about 3 or 4 months ago. I was like, do I need to get on medication again for anxiety? And I think, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm still figuring that out. And I'm trying to like parse out what is the normal amount of anxiety for a global pandemic and the world burning, and what is something I need to deal with more professionally. But I think the shame that comes with feeling like you're past something and then having to revisit it again, maybe, or at least having to consider that you're maybe not as far from it as you think. I think it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be like, okay, I thought I was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
I think it's because I feel that we feel that it's like such a deep lesson in like just having compassion for yourself and how you are moving through things, because I think as human beings, we're so focused on the end result, know, and like being done and then moving on and doing the next thing. And like how gracefully, and it doesn't have to always be gracefully, but can we be with that part of ourselves that is a part of us where we are afraid to be abandoned, but how can we integrate that feeling so that our awareness is heightened around those moments where maybe it comes up and we do have the tools to move through it, but like very much at peace with the fact that this is just like a part of who I am, Like, that's such a hard, because then you bring in someone, like if you're in a relationship and then like you're being seen going through those moments and it's like, oh my God, it can be so uncomfortable. What has it been like with Craig? I don't know too much about your relationship, but
yeah, we've been together for about like a year and a half now.
It's been cute to see you in love.
It's you know what? I've been in several relationships since being on Instagram, but I've never shared it really, like just little snippets here and there, because I was always really, I think for a different reason than you, like it was really because I was afraid it was going to fail. And then I would have to go through that in front of people. Yeah. And what I realized was I'm going to go through that in front of people anyway, because I'm going to be going through it. So, and different people I've dated have had different feelings about being on camera, like in front of people, like the comfortability level, like the person I dated right before Craig, like did not want to be on social at all. And I respected that completely. I'm like, yeah, great. But Craig's an entertainer. He's been a musician for 15 years. He's used to being in front of people. He loves it. He loves like being in the spotlight, which I love too. Not that I want it to be about him, but I like that he feels comfortable with it. But I mean, we've had fights, and something that I do when I fight, and this is a very vulnerable, like kind of scary thing to say, is my defense mechanism is I push away. Like hardcore, so much the fact that I'm like, let's just break up.
Same.
Same. I'm just like, let's just break up.
I'm like, I'm gonna hit the road. You're gonna hit the road. Yeah. I'm literally breaking up is number one go-to. He's like, honestly, that's like, I didn't unload the dishwasher.
That's
and you're hitting the road. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go. This isn't gonna work out.
That's trust control. I don't trust you. I want to control this.
Yes. And this feels like the safest option. That's the closest by. And I at least know that if I leave you, you won't leave me first.
100%.
It's so weird that we haven't had that.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is weird that I don't hit the road. Yeah, that's true.
You know what? With friends.
You've never had a moment where you're like, I know that I'm out of here.
That is weird.
But you know what? The thing is I have never had that with my friends.
Same, me neither. I would never. Well,
with my friends, I'm like kind of like ride or die unless you like cross me like big time. And then like we need to like figure that out. But with friends, I do not feel that. Same. It's something, I mean, it's definitely like deep connection to my dad and abandonment. And then like, it's the male figure. It's like feeling that with friends. I think I've always related to women so well. I've never understood those women that are like, I don't have female friends. I'm like, what? I love women.
I have in high school, but I was just like a slut. So I was just being an idiot. Like, it's like, no, dude, you're just like being shitty friend. Probably. But now it's like number one. This is my life.
Yeah. Well, but it's funny how like that I see that manifest, and I've had to re-explain my trauma to someone else, which feels so shitty to be like, hi, wow, this is showing up once again in our relationship. And I mean, having to like share parts of your past with someone that you haven't figured out, I think feels, and you kind of beat yourself up because you're like, I should have worked through this by now.
Yeah.
I should be past this. This should not be affecting me. And sometimes I'm like, literally there was a night where I was like literally crying on the runner in my hallway, just like laying on the ground, like crying during a fight because I was like, I just want to break up. Like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. And then I'm like, this is the way I've been taught to deal with problems. And I hate that this is the way that I have been taught, and it's not fair. And I remember just like being like, I didn't ask for this. I don't deserve that this is part of me. Like, I didn't do anything to like have to have this as part of my history. And now it's hurting people that I love that have nothing to do with this. And I think like reckoning with that over and over is, it sucks. It sucks. You know, it sucks to like have it show up in different ways and in relationships that have no connection to the initial pain, and have them have to experience it. And like Craig's very like, has had a very like happy family life. He was always like good kid. Like he just like doesn't have a lot of trauma from his like family past. And so sometimes I feel like the fucking broken toy in the relationship, and like the one that has all the worries, the one that has all the like issues. And I think through like couples therapy and stuff like that, it's been a really great thing for her to just kind of be like, everybody comes to the table with a different set of circumstances, a different set of worries, a different set of needs. And like, just because someone has more or less of the one of the other, it doesn't mean that you're not a valid part of their relationship, you know. And who's to say what he'll deal with in the future that I'll have to catch him on. And it's just that right now we're confronting a lot of stuff with like moving towards a more serious, I mean, we lived together for almost a year and a half, so it's very serious. But like, I mean, even talking about like kids, that's been like such a hard thing for me recently, because I'm about to be 35, and you kind of feel like life decides for you. Like life's deciding for me what, if I have kids or not, you know. And you're making these hard like life decisions that you never thought you'd have to make, of like, do I fucking freeze my shit, or do I just decide that I don't want to have kids? Do I chance it for the future? Do I even want kids? I don't know, but I want to be able to have the option. So it's navigating these things that you realize how much of the personal work is tied into everything.
Everything.
And that if you don't do it, it doesn't mean that it goes away. And if it keeps recurring, that's okay. It's like a lifelong struggle. And I remember talking to one of my friends that got married first out of all my friends. Her name's Kathleen, and she's amazing. She has 3 children now. But she was basically like, you're going to fight about the same thing over and over for the rest of your life. And she's like, you won't have a lot of fights. You'll just have the same fight. And I always remembered that. And then I transferred it out of relationships, like into just like personal. Like we all have one fight. We all have like a couple fights, couple singular things that for the rest of our life we'll have to deal with. It's not a lot of things, but that's just it. Like we will fight the same fight with ourselves over and over and over. And that is to be expected. And so to give myself a lot more grace when it comes to what that is and how many times we have to go over it. Like we don't have to scold ourselves like children, you know, like you did it again. It's like, yeah, this is all I've known for my whole life. And so it's really hard to change your mind about something that's been your truth. And so try and just be more forgiving of myself in scenarios where it comes up in my relationship or just in my personal fears or perfectionism, any of that. Like I'm trying to just be like, okay, you gotta like, yep, we're here again. It's okay. We'll move through it, maybe a little faster this time, maybe a couple milliseconds faster. And maybe by the time I am on my deathbed, like I'll be able to say like, yeah, I can move through that really fast. But you know, we're on a long, long life path, hopefully.
I think so much of it. Yeah. That's so powerful. Like so much of it. And we did an episode about this recently about not abandoning yourself, you know, like in those moments, because I relate to those moments where I've never said like we should just break up, but it is that feeling
Oh my
because
God.
I have
She's
a
not
fear
our
of
brand
that.
of
I
nuts.
get some every time. I tell
I have
you should really
I have a
get
fear
some
of
every
that.
Once.
I have like other fears around that, but it's like it is. I lost my train of thought, but it is just like staying with yourself in those moments, and that builds that self-trust, which I think has helped me to just like move through those repetitive pattern stories with just a bit more confidence, even if it's just minuscule and no one can notice. But me, I feel it a little bit differently this time. Or I come up on the other side of it and I'm like, whew, okay.
Yeah.
I just feel different rather than defeated.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think what you said too is so important, which is it's the speed at which it happens. So, what happens is you have this patterning that you have your whole life. And then when you finally have the mindfulness enough to realize it and you work with it, it really just becomes the speed at which you're able to work with that issue or that longstanding wound is shorter every time. So, I've been with my fiance for 8 years. So I don't know. Actually, I don't know if it's 8 or 7. I forget. But who knows? But it's like now I don't say we'll break up. Like that was me for the first probably 5 or 6 years. But now it's like I know and am aware of the issue. I see where it stems from. And I'm able to almost just observe myself in it, where I've done a 360 where I'm like, I'm not fucking leaving, where it's that like reminding myself that like I lean in when things are hard. I don't run away. Like we lean in, we have the conversation. If it's difficult, that's okay. And almost, in recognizing in my evolution too, that like the uncomfortable feelings, like we don't avoid them. It's like just because it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good when normally we feel really good doesn't mean it's bad. Right. It's just a different experience. So going through those as a couple is just so important, for your evolution and your journey. I did want to ask you too with, the couples therapy and as a couple. So do you guys really work on this issue, or what do you guys feel like is like a consistent patterning that you guys talk about? Oh, sorry, at therapy when you guys are together.
So he's like definitely. Oh, yeah. No. So he is definitely like an ultra chill Pisces, kind of like has not been like overly traumatized and is like nothing bothers him. I don't ever bother him. Like our fights are never because he's our fights are never because Craig's annoyed with me.
Yes. He's like, I never say anything.
I mean, it's because I'm a perfect angel, but also
100%. Oh my God.
But I have learned that just because one person has more like issues with someone's behavior or whatever, that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just we're different. Like in that sense, that's been really hard for me to kind of deal with. Also, him being really kind of a dreamer, goes along with things. It's the polar opposite of me, over planner, overthinker, low level of anxiety. So I'm kind of like, I can be a procrastinator in some areas, usually like with like annoying work stuff that I don't want to do. But really, I'm kind of like, I'm the person, if I get a parking ticket, I pay it that day.
Yes.
Like, okay, I need to like, someone tells me to book, I buy it on Amazon right then. Yep. I'm that kind of person where he's not. And so in dealing with issues, I'm the person that's like, let's talk about this right now. Let's do this right now. I want to like, because I feel an anxiety when things feel unsettled. Yeah. He does not. He's the person that's like, let's shelve this. We'll get to it. Not like that. So for me, a lot of it has been like, let's say something small, like I don't, this is like maybe a scenario that happened very early in our relationship. Okay. So you have like, you want to be a musician. Well, what does that look like? What does that look like for us? Like, what does it look like for my future? So in 5 years, if we had a kid, Would you be up at a studio all night?
Totally.
What does that look like?
What, you're on the road for the rest of your life on a tour bus?
I'm like, you're not going on tour.
Yeah,
I'm like, you're not going on tour.
Be in hotels with our baby.
Yeah. I'm like, what am I going to be breastfeeding on a tour bus for God's sake?
Our baby has to wear earphones all the time.
Yeah. Like, oh, do you know what that does to their head shape? Like, this is literally like, this is me to a T though, is like, let me take a small data point and extrapolate it over 10 years. And let me magnify it to the worst case scenario.
Yep. This is what we do.
And our baby has a weird shaped head in 10 years because of the headphones. Like, this is where we're at. Am I signing up for a weird baby with headphone head? Like, is this what I'm signing up for? And so for me, it is like, I have to slow myself down on the like data points, but that doesn't mean that I can't have the worry and we can't talk about the thing. I just can't, then like executed an aligned chart over like what happens in our future.
That's
it's kind of like
anxiety though. It's
totally,
like this situation actually doesn't exist, but it exists in my head. And it's something that is a loop thought for me. And I'm not okay about this non-existent situation.
And I think when you've been to therapy a lot, you do notice patterns and that little behaviors do link back to patterns and choices. The way you make choices do like actually create, like have like a lot of, like your current choices do like lean into patterns that you've made. So I'm also a person that's always looking for that in myself. I'm like, why am I making this choice? Am I making this choice because it links back to like this or this fear or this insecurity? So I think I'm doing that on myself a lot. And so I have to like slow myself down in doing that to someone else who maybe doesn't think about that.
Yeah. Sure.
Who's literally, I'm like, what are you thinking about? And he's like thinking about conspiracy theory about like JFK. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I love that. But what about this? Have you been thinking about this? He's like, no,
Totally.
like literally hasn't crossed his mind what it means. But that is like what I've realized is I can't date me. I can't date me.
Yeah.
I can't date me. And like, I talked to this like psychic lady and I don't know where I fall on like psychics or like energy healers or any of that stuff. I don't know where I land.
To our podcast.
Yeah, just so you know, we're at 100.
No, I know, but I have to be.
Are those we no, but subscribe to it so much.
I know you do, but I just like
I think that you don't.
It's your trust. It's that trust.
And I do believe in like like signs and things like that, but I think I grew up in such a like conservative Christian household that woo-woo shit was never part of my life until I moved to New York. And even like the first 5 years of New Yorkers weren't having it. So then I was like, then I feel like people start talking about it and I'm like, okay, but I have to be honest. I know you guys like you're like,
I respect
but
you where you're
I have to say like, I had a psychic tell me at the beginning, she's like, you guys are opposite signs. And either you will be a terrible match or you will be the perfect match because he will ground you and you will give him drive. And I've thought about that the entire relationship of like, that actually is true. And I do feel like he makes me more free and I ground him. And it does, sometimes it's not like the perfect well-oiled machine, but certainly like I do feel that like, wow, man, I feel lighter around him and I can see that he feels more driven around me. And so that's really great. I also had an energy reader tell me that I'm the oldest person she's ever met. She said, I'm thousands of years old.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
We respect old and young souls here. So either way gets an all response.
She was like, you're really old. And I was like,
see that.
Excuse me? She's like, you're thousands of years old. I was like, okay, cool. Again, I was like getting a facial at that time and I was like, this is an interesting, what's going on? And then I'm like,
this is an add-on.
I'm like, did I just take mushrooms?
Yeah,
what
you're
just
like,
happened?
return to sender. I want to be quiet right now.
No, I honestly was like, this is really interesting. And I want to let myself lean into it. I do. Like, I want to like believe it and lean into it. But sometimes it is like, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah. You got to get good ones. I've had 400 readings in my life and there have been very good ones and there have been very, very not good ones.
Have you ever had someone tell you something that was like just so off that you're like a fake?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like I had a woman tell me she's like, your marriage is, I'm like, I'm not married.
No way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Of one.
Maybe it was a past life.
There was one that like she started and she's like, surfing. You surf, don't you? And I was like, literally never surfed. Never.
She's
never
like surfing the web. Surfing the web.
Seriously. She's like, no, but I keep seeing water, surfing. And I was like, oh no, this isn't.
No, not me.
When I was bartending, I had like these customers that would come in all the time. This group of men, very interesting, eclectic group, and one of them like claimed to be kind of like a palm reader or psychic of sorts, and he was just like, he's like, buckle up. He's like, no, literally buckle up. He's like, you need to be careful when you're driving your car. And I was like, whoa. Oh my God. Didn't ask for that.
What a horrible thing for someone to tell you.
Yes. Oh, we had
think about it often.
Astrology reading from someone we love, but at the end of it, she's like, oh, okay. Do you have health issues? I was like, no. She's like, okay, so those might be coming up. And was like roasting me. Like it was like she was worried. Like she was unwell. Like looking at my chart.
What?
She's like, well, whatever you're doing, keep up with it because those health issues, those are around the corner. I'm like, sweet.
I think you can just chalk it up now to just like, she was just talking about coronavirus. Yeah, it was happening to everyone.
Oh, that could be.
You know what? She was just feeling the like environment wasn't you.
Yes.
But that would send me into an absolute anxiety spiral.
I was just like, well, I don't know.
There was a brief time when I first got my car because I lived in New York forever without a car. And then I finally bought a car and I was like,
that's huge.
Yeah, it was like, this is like fun.
Babe, that's like big time.
But then 2 months in, one day I'm driving. I'm like, I'm going to hit a pedestrian. I'm going to hit someone with my car. And I thought about it and got so anxious about it that I didn't drive for like a week. Wow. Because I was so afraid that I was going to hit someone in my car. And then I'm like, oh, this is just anxiety. This is just like unnecessary anxiety that I'm like channeling into like my car. But guys, the brain is a real thing. And like, this stuff is crazy. It is crazy what the mind can send you. Like, I mean, the places I have gone.
I love that you stopped driving though and took a break. You got it.
Yeah, I was like, I need to respect how I'm feeling right now.
In some way, I think.
Yes.
I mean, how many times if we had just listened to our intuition, like, would you have like stopped? I'm like, maybe I was gonna like something was gonna happen that week, and I didn't do it.
Yeah. You're like, maybe I was gonna hit my soulmate. Maybe this is a single.
I was gonna hit Craig.
Yeah, you're gonna Craig.
Speaking of my last question, speaking of coronavirus, like have your priorities changed? Like what has been like most profound about this time for you?
I don't know that my priorities have changed, but I think I have been increasingly thankful for setting up a life that felt good for me. Just even like in New York, prioritizing like making an apartment rental feel like home.
Yes.
Having like even like adopting my dog last year, like things that I maybe took for granted, just like, oh, these are like fun things. It's given me a sense of like priority and order and coziness and comfort that I didn't really expect. And so I think just like having a lot more gratitude for really simple things. And I think that's been like for everybody, you really realize like, who are the people I actually want to communicate with? Who are the people that I'm like, when it's difficult to communicate, who am I making a priority? I think this has made me, and maybe for a lot of people, reanalyze their friendships, who you want in your life, who really feels necessary and who's noise. Same with like work. Like, what do I actually like to do? I think recording the podcast has been, as much as I hate doing it via Zoom, I'm like, wow, this feels life-giving to me. Like connecting with another human being about things that are like going on. It just feels very satisfying. But yeah, I think the priorities have shifted toward like gratitude about very simple things. And that you don't need a lot of like, I don't need to be going every second of the day. I don't actually miss rushing. I realized how much I was rushing every day. And that feels really nice to not do that. And as much as, yeah, if I could press the like rewind reset button on the last few months, sure I would. But I feel like I've learned a lot about myself. Don't you guys feel that way? Like
Big time.
You just have this whole shifted perspective of like what you care about,
Yes.
what's important.
The priorities thing is huge. It's like your space feeling good is like now a real priority where you're like, oh, I really want to be in a space I love. The people you love becomes really clear and obvious. And yeah, especially us two, we were rushing around for years. So having that time to really just be home and feel like we were talking about earlier, like we have jobs. It's not, it's never a job what we do, but it just feels more stable and consistent and less of like the reaching and the pushing and all of that.
It feels really nice to have a break from hustle culture.
Yeah.
And you realize how much rest and space makes you, it affects you. Like it affects how you see the world. And it like, I feel like I have so much more time to think about things. Unfortunately, there's a lot to think about. But yeah, I'm like, wow, I was really filling my schedule with a lot of things to make myself feel like I was being productive or cool or busy. And it's really nice to not have a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. That makes me so happy. Last question for me, just on the topic of, body during this time, have you been able to do anything that has made you feel just alleviated any anxiety you have on not moving as much, on being home more, on the stress and anxiety that you potentially have?
3 things. Number 1, only working out when I really feel like working out and not doing it as a punishment for staying at home or being like, I'm not walking today, so I need to like work out. Like, I feel like the beginning of quarantine, like it became like an Instagram like boot camp.
Yes.
I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, we're like going through like history. We're not like, we don't need to make this like about getting abs. Like, I don't understand what summer camp I joined on accident, but I don't like it. I was like, this sucks. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this so much. Because everyone was like, we're going to live stream our workouts every day. We're going to do, look, I'm just like, ew, this is gross. I have massive anxiety and I want to stay in my sweatpants. The second thing I did was eating what made me feel comfortable and then like incorporating a lot of like healthy food into it, but also, I'm sorry, food for me is comfort. It is. It just is. It's always been, I love food. It's part of like enjoyment of life. And so for me, like letting myself have food that feels comforting to me at times, not in a binging way, but in a literally just like there's not much to enjoy right now. So I'm going to enjoy this. But then the third thing, the best fucking thing I did this entire quarantine is buy clothes that made me feel comfortable in the body that I have right this second.
Yep.
And that's not a luxury that everyone can do, obviously. But like I tried on shorts from last summer. They don't fit. I'm like, well, looks like I'm ordering new shorts. And like just doing the physical act of forgiving myself for where I'm at. Not that it needs forgiveness, but just being like, you know what? Ain't no thing. Buy bigger shorts. Like, it's fine. Like, you can keep the old shorts if it makes you feel any better, but like, just like buy what makes you feel comfortable. What do I need right now? This is not like this summer is not last summer. It's nothing like it. So why am I forcing myself into like this format of a year ago? And so I think those 3 things have really helped me with just like being able to any negative thought that I have, accept it, acknowledge it, and then let that shit go.
Yeah. Powerful. Yeah. I talked about that I did a Life Edit episode and it was like so therapeutic to go through all my clothes and be like, you know what? These are never going to fit me anymore. And that's very cool. And so just like letting go of that. And now I feel like everyone is all about comfortable clothes. Mm-hmm. That's like all people want to wear. Love this. Like it is like,
we're in fucking billowy shit.
Yes,
like I love a billowy blouse. I mean,
this is
throw on a spandexy biker short and a billowy blouse.
Yes. The bigger the blouse, the bigger my smile.
You 3 could get, you 2, we could all 3 be in my blouse right now. It's fine. I love it though. I love it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like transitioning into that, like the like wacky art teacher who's like 50
Honey.
with like big linen shirts and like big earrings.
Yes.
Chico's vibe.
Oh, I think we go straight to Chico's.
Straight to Chico's. It's like, I need this billowy blouse, a long skirt to my feet, and then like a belt, and then maybe some
Am I wearing a
chunky,
bra?
funky earrings. No, who knows if I'm
Don't
wearing
know.
a bra. I've got
Don't
chunky
know.
earrings on. It's all neutral colors. It's really working for me, and I respect Chico's on an intense level at this point.
I mean, I used to not understand big jewelry to just like match the like big. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I get the vibe. You guys were right.
It's so
I'm going to be
weird.
in a comfortable sandal.
As you get older and like older people's stuff makes sense to you.
Yes.
You're like, when you're younger, you're like, why the fuck would you wear Crocs? And now I'm like, Crocs are kind of dope. Like, Crocs fucking make sense to me. Like, weird stuff like literally makes sense to me now. I'm like, oh,
Totally.
of course she would like do that. Like, duh.
Sensibility never made sense until like now. And then you're like, I totally understand why everyone was living their life like this. And like, why was I so resistant? Why did I pour myself into a fake Hervé Leger bandage dress?
I would rent mine from Rent the Runway, and they would be like, they would have like stains all over it, and I'd be like, "Hello." I'd be in
some
Vegas
girls
wearing
vomit from like
wearing a
hacking
rented
district.
Hervé Leger dress. And just he called me a mail order bride. He's like, "Dude, you look like a mail order bride."
I mean, speaking of mail order brides, if anyone listening to this is like looking for, I just started 90 Day. No. Oh yeah, I mean, I could probably give you some of this. But 90 Day Fiance, we've just been like just starting.
Oh my God, I haven't gotten into it yet. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost it's hard for me too because I just feel I'm like a little too sad for it.
Empathetic.
Like, oh man,
You're like a little
I just
empathetic.
am a little too analytical of people. I'm like, oh, so he's got this problem with his mom, and then okay, so now he's trying to play it out. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh,
I mean, makes the best part.
I find a good way to make everything like not fun. So, oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. I cannot wait to do.
Press send. I can't wait to have you guys on. It's going to be so fun. We get to hang out for another hour.
Yeah. Where can everyone find you from our community?
If you want to find me online on all the things, please don't find me on TikTok. It's embarrassing. But everything else, just Chinae Alexander, Chinae Alexander. And you can listen to Press Send. We release episodes every Wednesday, and listen to the almost 30 crossover episode that is coming out very soon.
Pumped.
Cannot
Thanks,
wait.
girl. You're the best.
All right, we love you.
Thank
We'll talk
you
to you in a
guys.
little bit.
All right. Bye-bye.